Okay, I'm super excited to actually film this one because not only do I feel like nobody films great content on this concept, but also it's something that I wish I had when I was first coming up creating content and trying to create a name for myself in a space that I wanted to make money and, perform and make an impact in this industry. Okay? And that concept is branding. And what I want to cover in this video is what the fuck branding even is, what it consists of, how we can operationalize it and really take this intangible concept and make it tangible. Okay, that's really my entire goal in this video, and I'm going to do that using a couple examples. I'm going to be doing that using a couple of strategies we can do, and then how we can actually leverage this in our own content to kind of associate ourselves with higher quality leads, have a faster buying cycle, and in turn make more money. Okay, and so I want to show you how brand can actually correlate to cash flow. So let's get right into things. Starting off with an example. Okay, I want to break down what brand even is to begin with. Okay, and so I'm going to start off with the simplest example I could possibly give just because it's me, but my brand, for example. You've probably found me one of two different ways, right? These are the main platforms that I use. It's either through my YouTube, which is a super small following, so I appreciate you if you found me through YouTube, or you found me through my Instagram, which is a lot bigger of a following, and I post more consistently and way more volume on there. And so odds are you probably found me through Instagram and through short form content. I don't have a huge brand by any means, but if you do follow me, right, on either of these platforms, if you do interact with my content to some degree, whether you noticed it or not, my brand is relevant, right? When you think of me, there are things that you associate with my name, with what I do, with who I've worked with, and that's what I want to pretty much explain to you right here. Brand is a fancy word of labeling associations, right? When you think of me, you probably have found me and think directly about, my clients. Maybe you know one of my clients. Maybe you know the results that I've gotten some of my clients. And so that's how you associate with my brand. Maybe you've seen some of my work, right? You've seen a lot of the results I've generated, helping people go from 0 to 10 to 20 to 50 to even $100,000 months, right? Generating hundreds of thousands of leads in the process through organic content, through basic ads, and through a basic strategy and funnel that has allowed me to make six figures while still being a 20-year-old college student, right? So maybe you've seen me through this. Maybe that's my brand to you. Maybe you have seen my software, right? Maybe you've seen my background as a software engineer. Maybe you've seen that, my expertise in automation, in AI, in, integrated systems. Maybe you see all this and the software brand that I'm building and the tools that I like to create for my clients. And maybe that's what you think about me. What are the other two I have here? Maybe you've seen my content, specifically my short form, because I'm a lot more personable, a lot more vulnerable there. Maybe you've seen my content. Maybe you've seen that, I do everything for my family. You see that the reason I even own and operate this business is so that I can give back, so that I can provide, so that I can make an impact on the lives around me. Maybe that's what you think of when you think about me. Otherwise, maybe you think that, you think of my time as a collegiate athlete. You think of me as a gymnast, how I've been able to build my business alongside these responsibilities. Maybe that's what you think of, right? In truth, if you came from one or even two or even three of these things, you probably don't see the full picture, right? And you need to realize that my brand encompasses an entire ecosystem, right? My brand, my intentional associations, the things you know about me are there on purpose, right? I've decided to actually market all of these elements of my life with intentionality, right? And so the more intentional you can be with what you put out, the more intentional you can be with the the amount of cash and the quality of the leads and the clients that you pull in. Now, let me explain that a little bit further. In associations, right, you can think of each association as like a flower, okay? So this is going to be, no, I'm going to use a green one actually. You can think of each association like a flower. Oh, this is going to be so horrible. And some petals. Okay, so each association is like a flower. For example, this is my association to college athletics, or this is my association to software or client results or doing things for my family, whatever it is, right? And I have a ton of these, right? I have a ton of different associations that I associate myself with, right? And you probably only know me for a few of them, but regardless, these exist and they're in my ecosystem as far as the content that I create, right? And so let's say I have 5 associations. Putting these together forms a bouquet, okay? I'm going to draw a vase. I'm going to draw a vase to show that like this is cohesive, okay? All of these together builds a brand. If I had just one of these, then it would just be one association. It would be one petal or one flower, and you wouldn't know me for anything else, right? You would have one singular dimension, or one singular view of me, right? And what I want to do is I want to build this vase, this bouquet of flowers of associations, so that you can actually see me from multiple different angles, so that you can experience my ecosystem from a 3D perspective, right? And that's how you're going to cover more of your market share. That's how you're going to differentiate yourself. It's so much harder for someone to copy one. It's so much harder for someone to copy 5 associations than it is to copy one association. For example, if the biggest guys in the industry, if they were just marketing their fast cars, right? All I need to do is buy a fast car and suddenly my brand is equivalent to theirs. But that's not true, right? When you think of someone who has a fast car, when you think of, I don't know, when you think of Andrew Tate, for example, right, and his Bugatti, you don't just think of the Bugatti, right? You think about his content. You think about cigars. You think about his kickboxing. You think about his brother, right? All of these intentional associations is what separates him from the rest of the people in the industry. It can't just be one association. It needs to be multiple, and that's how you build a real brand, okay? Now, inevitably, because this is just the reality of personal branding, the reality of business, you will make one poor association, okay? And that will lead to one dead flower where, all the petals are falling off, right? It will happen, unfortunately, whether that's partnering with the wrong people, whether that's posting content you probably shouldn't have, saying something you shouldn't have. Someone will see this, and suddenly you will lose credibility in their head, because when you think of a vase, when you think of a bouquet of flowers, right, and you see one of the flowers dying, naturally you think the rest of the bouquet will follow suit, right? And that's what happens when, you can think of big corporations that made little tiny mistakes, or their CEO made little tiny mistakes. For example, Elon Musk getting on, podcasts and saying stuff he probably shouldn't have. Mark Zuckerberg going out and firing 8,000 people, right? These are not great looks for the company. But the reason why we still buy from Tesla, we still use Facebook, use Instagram, is because they have created so many more positive associations in our head that we can ignore, or it kind of blinds us from that first association. And so all that to say, a brand is really just a set of intentional associations that you make to cover your market, to cover more surface area in your industry, that will separate you from the rest of the competition, but also build trust, right? Build credibility, because the more good flowers you have in this vase, the more you'll cover up the bad flowers, right? And so I hope this was a good analogy for you to understand what branding really is and how you need to think about it being intentional with what you put out on the internet, as far as your personal brand, but also, what your business does, okay? And so I want to help us contextualize this and take a look at this from a business perspective in terms of how we can use this concept and turn it into cash flow, how we can turn it into clients. Specifically, I focus for coaching businesses, so I'll work on a client getting model, a client acquisition model. But regardless of what business you run, it's still important to understand this concept of how you can get customers, right? So I want to start with the basics, okay? Because each of these steps progressively gets more complex, but each of them has only one-step formula that you need to understand in order to leverage your brand to the fullest, okay? Number one, the question is, why do people even buy? Like, it can be a low-ticket product. It doesn't even need to be like a fancy car, a Porsche, a Bugatti. It can be something from the grocery store, right? Why do people buy to begin with? And that's because they understand that the perceived value of what they are looking at is greater than the cost, right? I go to Chipotle because I know the perceived value is that shit is delicious, and it's definitely worth $10. Right, a Chipotle bowl is definitely worth $10 because I'm willing to feed myself and it being delicious. Right. Now moving up a layer, why do people buy high ticket? Right, not just a Chipotle bowl, not just $10. Why does someone pay $1,000? Why does someone pay $10,000? Right, and the truth to this is that you need the perceived value plus an additional upside, right? We could have sold, a Chipotle bowl because I was hungry, right? It's just like the value of that is that I need food. But we need a potential upside. For example, if you were to sell a car, right? If you were to sell a car, and you want to sell that car at, at a that's a high ticket price for a car. Let's say a Porsche. How can you get someone to buy a Porsche, a luxury item, as opposed to, I don't know, some rundown Toyota, right? The perceived value is that, you're able to drive places. It's a transportation vehicle. But is that worth $50,000 to $100,000, right? Probably not. However, what are the upsides of getting a Porsche? Oh, like it'll go faster than other cars. Okay, that's kind of fun. That's kind of cool. Oh, you'll look good in it. Okay, that's kind of ego driven, right? Like you'll make more friends. You'll have a higher status. Okay, now that is an upside, and that is something we can add to the perceived value so that someone can see themselves winning having getting the product, right? That's what it means to sell high ticket, and that's how we get people to buy it. Okay, but we can make this even more complex. Why do people buy a high ticket instantly, right? How do you avoid people that go to you and say, I need to think about it when you pitch your high ticket product? How do you get people to take action faster and reduce the speed of the buying cycle, right? This simple formula is the perceived value plus the regular upside that we talked about, but it's greater than the cost plus the pain of their existing problem, okay? I will buy a Porsche, right? I will buy a Porsche at a certain cost, but I need to think about it, right? Versus I need to buy a Porsche because my last car just broke down and I'm in desperate need of a car and I have money to spend, right? That desperation, that urgency, that need is how we're going to get people to pay instantly, right? Now, this is operating off of a lot of fear, right, and a lot of pain. And there's other ways to sell this, but the most valuable way, and because it's harder to sell off of just pure value, otherwise it's just like selling this, but at a higher level. But to get people to buy a high ticket instantly, you not only need to help them see the perceived value, need to see the potential upsides, but you need to help articulate your cost, the cost of what they're what that is, how it's worth it, but also what the cost is of them not taking action. The cost of them, staying where they're at, being in pain, and being in a place where they don't want to be. If you can sell that, right, then this becomes so much easier. The final step of this is like, how can we get people to buy a high ticket instantly and they're great to work with, and they're great clients, right? And they're repeat buyers, they're loyal, they get good results, they're willing to put in the work, whatever it is. And here, the differentiator is trust in results, right? I can get anyone to buy anything off of this step, right? If I can explain to you that you are in pain, right, and you desperately need this new high ticket product in order to solve some problem, plus have an additional upside, sure, I could sell you on that. That's no problem. But if I'm able to introduce trust in the result, if I'm able to introduce some sort of relationship where they believe in me, they believe my existing success, they believe in the success of my product, the success of my service, then suddenly they're not only going to buy instantly, but they're going to be bought into what I have to sell, right? They're not just going to take it and leave. They're going to take it and be interested to hear more. They're going to be interested in how they can make the most out of it, okay? And this is the power of brand. Being able to accelerate someone from here to here is a matter of one element, and that is brand. How can we create a brand that is so trustworthy, that has so many good results, that associates ourselves with so many good flowers, right? That we're able to create trust that gets people to buy a high ticket product instantly and still be invested into what we have to say and what we have to offer. right? And I want to make this a little bit more tangible to you in terms of what this means in terms of getting someone, like an individual to buy, because this is a lot of sales. Let's bring it back to branding, okay? So it doesn't matter if our leads come in cold. It doesn't matter if our leads come in hot, right? Whether they come in through cold traffic, like through ads, or if they come in through hot or warmer traffic, like our organic content, right? Every single person has a buying line, right? That buying line is where they finally decide that, okay, you know what? I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to make the next step forward. And I'm going to put my money down and purchase it, right? Whether you realize that you have that buying line for every single time you try and purchase a product, whether that's food, whether that's a stick of gum, whether that's a Porsche or a coaching program, whatever it is, there's always a buying line, right? And our job, right, that buying line is where we make our money as coaches, as operators, as business owners. Our job is implementing a sales system that moves that buying line as early as possible, right? Because if I can get someone to buy within a 1 day time period, right? That's fantastic if you're able to do that with a high ticket offer. But if I can convince someone to purchase in a 1 day time period, then suddenly over a span of a week, I can get 7 different clients, right, for a high ticket product. Versus if I have poor branding, if I have poor marketing and a poor sales process that relates to that, then suddenly I can only, sell one person within a week, and we make so much less money, right? And so it's our job to have a solid brand, a solid sales process that actually gets us to this point faster, okay? No matter the traffic. And that's where our brand comes in, right? You can think of cold traffic. So imagine someone has never seen you before. They're coming into your content from a cold ad, and you're pushing them to a landing page, and that says buy now, right? Buy my, $2,000 product, okay? Their buying line is going to be all the way over here, right? They're going to be like, wow, I'm not going to just click on this random person who I've seen one video from and expect me to buy $2,000 worth of product. That's not going to happen, right? Versus if we're able to get our warm traffic, our organic content, right? We've built a brand, right? They've seen what we associate ourselves with. We associate ourselves with family, with athletics, with results, with software, with, building products, having a good service, okay? If we have that brand in their mind, that creates so much trust that it creates this sense of relatability. They feel like they've built a relationship with us as a personal brand, and that increases the trust and warms them up fast enough to reduce the buying line to, here or here or here to the 1 day period, right? And that's the power of a personal brand, and that's the power of building credibility and trust online, okay? And you see this every single day. When you go shopping, right? When you go shopping and you want to shop online, where do you want to go? It's generally always Amazon, right? Versus if you want to go shopping, but you need to shop for at-home appliances. First thing that comes to mind is Home Depot. If you want to, have a good experience with your family and you also have dinner that you need to make that night, go to your local farmer's market, right? If you want to furnish an apartment, go to IKEA. So all of this is shopping for different reasons, but not only just different reasons. When you think of the reasons why you need something, your mind naturally goes to where you've seen the most trust, where you've seen the most branding, and it is in these big brands, right? Sure, the local farmer's market isn't a huge nationwide brand, but it's local. If it's big in your area, then it's big to you, and you know exactly that it associates itself with convenience, right? Going back to associations. And so the same thing goes when you're in your everyday life and choosing how you want to operate, where you choose to go, and how you want to spend your money. Nike, why do we choose to buy $50 t-shirts when that took us $4 to make? You know what I mean? It's just slapping that logo on. That's all it is. The truth of the matter is brand, right? It has a status associated with it. Nike is premium. Nike is fast. Nike is just do it, right? Things like that. That's how you associate it, and that's why you want to purchase the product. I thought this was interesting. Everyone probably knows this, but when you look up Apple, the damn fruit doesn't even show up first. It's the products. It's the iPhone. They've built such a powerful brand. When you think of Apple, the first thing you don't even think about the fruit. You think about the technology, the phones, the laptops, what they're doing with AI, whatever it is. It's always top of mind because they've created such strong intentionality in their associations with innovation, right, and technology. Same thing goes for Porsche. Same thing goes with Supreme. Supreme's probably one of the most powerful examples of this, right? Other than like Nike. Supreme literally just created stickers. They literally just created a logo, slapped it onto existing products, existing things you've seen before, and suddenly upcharged it to premium prices. That is the power of brand. And being able to deconstruct that and intentionally create associations within your content is how you're going to be able to create this perception of premium service or being premium products in your clients' minds. You're going to be their first choice when they think of what they need. You're going to reduce that buying line so that they can buy quicker. You're going to ensure you have a formula that guarantees them the sale. And at the end of the day, all you need to do is post content that's intentional and connects to your personal brand associations. I hope this was helpful in helping you engineer your personal brand, helping you get a better, intentional grasp as to what brand really is, how it relates to content, how it relates to sales. And I hope this makes you a lot of money. So drop me in the comments what you think about this video, what you want me to post next. And if this is interesting to you and you want to learn more, if you want me to break down your brand, personally audit your content and your strategy, I'll put my booking link down below. Grab a slot on my calendar, and you and I can have a chat and see how we can help you. All right, see you in the next one.